That's the Shemaz Baruch we begin Daf Mem Zayin Mesechta Yevamos on the bottom of Mem Vav Mem Beis, 2 lines up at the bottom of the Yomid. With the Gemara continues with related discussion of the previous Daf discussing the halachas of gears, and it's primarily the theme of today's Daf. As the Gemara begins, turn about in the Brisa. Misha Ba v'Ama Ger Ani. If someone comes along and says, I'm a ger, I converted. So Yochel Nikablenu, you would think that you accept him, meaning he would not require the what's called Hatavas Dam Bris, which is, although he's circumcised, but there is a requirement of, if it wasn't done for the purposes of milah, of circumcision, to become a Jew, you have to take a droplet of the blood of the covenant and to do a tevilah in the mikveh. You think you wouldn't have to do that? Okay, we believe him. He said he's a convert. Tamalema, as the pasuk teaches in the Yikra, it says, and the pasuk says, "V'chiyager itcha." If it's going to dwell with you, ger convert ba'artzachem in your land. What do you mean with you? Says the Gemara, but muchzik l'cha. That was, we presume, when it's been established by you that he's a ger, but just coming along and saying he's a ger is not sufficient. Now, how do you know, however, if he comes along with his witnesses to testify that he became a ger, that then he would be believed? That's the pasuk teaches that he's going to dwell with you a ger, which sounds like whatever the situation is, which the Gemara later on says actually going to ask. What do you mean if he has witnesses with him? Obviously, why do you need a pasuk? We always know witnesses are believed. Now, when it says in the pasuk ba'artzachem, if the ger is going to live with you in your land, as getinta by memzayin and aleph, so ainly ela ba'aretz. I would only know that a ger could dwell amongst you, and you will accept the ger in Eretz Yisrael. How do we know that actually something would apply out of Eretz Yisrael we accept converts to? Tamalim, it says itcha with you, which is b'chol makom shitcha wherever he is with you. Which later on the Gemara is going to ask, what do you mean? You already used this word itcha to tell you that we don't believe him. It has to be dafka b'muchzik l'cha. And continues the Brisa, but imkain if that's the case, matamalim ba'aretz. So why does it say ba'artzachem if it has nothing to do with Eretz Yisrael? You accept converts even out of Eretz Yisrael. It says Gemara because there's a discrepancy. Ba'aretz tzarich lehevi raya. In Eretz Yisrael, a person has to bring proof that he converted in a court. Why? Because maybe he's from the Gevanim, who would circumcise, and really it's because he likes the benefits of Eretz Yisrael, therefore he's saying that he converted and he's lying. So therefore, that's what we're saying, ba'artzachem in Eretz Yisrael, you have to bring a proof. But b'chutz la'aretz in tzarich levi raya, but in chutz la'aretz you don't have to bring a raya, that's to be reviewed. Therefore it says ba'artzachem to tell you that there's certain halachic stringencies that it's specific in Eretz Yisrael, not in chutz la'aretz. But yes, we accept converts even out of Eretz Yisrael. But Rachamim, they disagree with Rabbi Yehuda. They say no, bein ba'aretz, bein b'chutz la'aretz, whether Eretz Yisrael, out of Eretz Yisrael, tzarich levi raya, you always have to bring proof that a person converted, and we wouldn't believe him just like that. Nothing more goes to explain this brisa. In Rabbi Yehuda's quote, in his teaching, he said, right now, we don't believe him on his own. But if he comes together with his witnesses, then we believe him. Says the Gemara, why do we need a pasuk for? If you have Eidim, of course, we believe the Eidim. So Rav Shesha says, no, because the Eidim say, they didn't say we saw him convert. They say, we heard that he converted in their court. So I think when you would have thought to say Loilam and we shouldn't believe them, just the fact to say what they heard. That's what's saying, that if he comes with witnesses and they say they heard this, then we would believe them and that's sufficient. Now it said in the Brisa Ba'aretz, it says in the pasuk in the land of Eretz Yisrael. In Leil Ba'aretz. So I would have thought to say to the Brisa that we only accept converts in Eretz Yisrael. But Chutz Lo, how do you know even out of Eretz Yisrael? It says the word Itcha, wherever you the Jewish people are, even out of Eretz Yisrael. Says the Gemara, as we already referenced this before, but we already used the word itcha to tell you that we don't believe the person actually b'muchzik. We have to know it's established from elsewhere, not from him that he was a ger. So how can you use the same word itcha to tell you that we makabel game even chutz la'aretz? Says the Gemara, you're right. There's two different psukim. Chada, one of them that tells us that he has to bring a raya, has to be muchzik, is me'itchas from that as we brought it. Chada, this that we say we accept game from out of Eretz Yisrael, is me'imach, which, as Rashi brings the pasuk Mikra Chavei, Geir V'Toshav says V'chai Imach, or as the Vilna Gaon brings the pasuk but Itchem, but be that as it may, there's another verse that says with you wherever you are, even chutz la'aretz. Now that was Rabbi Yehuda. The Brisa quoted V'chomam, the sages disagree. They say no, bein ba'aretz, bein b'chutz la'aretz. Whether Eretz Yisrael, out of Eretz Yisrael, tzorich le'birai, one has to bring a proof, even in chutz la'aretz, that he was megayer in a court. Says but what do they do with Rabbi Yehuda? Rabbi Yehuda's whole proof was, it says ba'artzachem. What does that come in to tell us? A discrepancy that Eretz Yisrael you have to bring a raya, not a chutz la'aretz. According to Chum you have to bring a raya in chutz la'aretz. What does ba'artzachem come to teach you? Says that you need actually to teach you the other way. You're right. You always have to bring a raya, but you needed to teach you that regarding accepting converts. What do we mean? Didn't we say wherever you are we accept converts? No, we actually had to teach you a chiddush that fill ba'aretz b'kam gerim. we would have thought actually that you wouldn't. We have to tell you that even Eretz we accept converts. Because the Sukkah that you would have thought the same Mishum Tibus Eretz Yisrael Kamagayri, that he's only converted because of the benefits of Eretz Yisrael. So you would think actually inverse of what we had said earlier, maybe you would think you would not accept Gerim in Eretz Yisrael for that reason. And so to even Bahashtanami, the Lekha Tibus, even in today's times where there's no great benefits of the Eretz Yisrael, but still, there's ikaleket, shikho, pay my son. There's the poor man's gifts, and there's the gleanings, and the bundles, and the corners of the field that have to be left over, which are obligations there to Yisrael. So you would think maybe you should never accept game in that because they're coming for ulterior motives. Kamashma to tell you, but Aretz that tells you that you are makabel game even in Eretz Yisrael. That's what the pasuk is used for according to the Chacham. Now, halachically, Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg says halacha is bein ba'aretz bein b'chutz la'aretz, whether in Eretz Yisrael, out of Eretz Yisrael, tzarich levirai. One has to be approved that he converted appropriately in the court. Says Pshita, obviously, what do you have to tell us? We know whenever there's a machlekes between an individual, which is Rabbi Yehuda, B'Rabban, and the public, which is the Chacham, halach Rabban, and the Chacham are the ones who say this opinion. Says Gemara, no, what would you say mistabatam Rabbi Yehuda? The reasoning Rabbi Yehuda is logical because the Messiah like kroi, the psukim support him, as Rashi explains. When it says imach, that sounds like wherever kol she'itcha mashma, wherever the Jewish people are, and there would be Chutz La'aretz and Eretz Yisrael. So what is it ba'artzachem? Obviously, it's going on, not that we accept game, because I already know from Itcha, it's going on the Raya, that in Eretz Yisrael one is being a Raya, and not a Chutz La'aretz. That sounds like a Yehuda, not like the Chachamim. Kamashon, to tell you that no, still the halacha is going to be like the Chachamim, that one is to be a Raya, even the Chutz La'aretz. Now, a related discussion regarding this of the Gerus, as it applies to an individual being believed. So, term within the Brisa regarding this idea, but in a different context. It says the pasuk in Devarim. It says v'shvatetem tzedek, that you should litigate justice bein ish or bein achiv or bein geter, between a man and his fellow brother and a convert. Now, Mekan Rabbi Yehuda, from here Rabbi Yehuda says that gerushin is gari bebezdin, because it's saying shvatetem tzedek, justice, mishpat, in the context of ger. To tell you that a gerushin is gari bebezdin, if he converts in court, he's a ger, then he's a ger. But if he converts on his own, then the ger is not considered a ger. And Ma'aseh be'echad shebol Rabbi Yehuda, this is Rabbi Yehuda. There was such a story that someone that came in front of Rabbi Yehuda. Normally said to him like this: "Says Geyarti beini l'bein asmi." He says, "You know, I've been a yid many years. I converted by myself." So Rabbi Yehuda says, "Yesh l'cha edim? Do you have witnesses that you converted?" Amalei says, "Lav, no." He says, "Yesh l'cha banim?" Says, "Do you have children?" Amalei hen. He says, "Yes." So Amalei says to him, "Nemanat l'ifs l'asasmucha." You're believed to invalidate yourself for being like a Jew, because you said you did it the wrong way on your own. And you actually not believed to invalidate your children. Your children have a chazak of being Yisraelim. You're not believed to say that they're not going to be valid Jews. Says Gemara, Yehuda really say that he did not believe regarding his sons. But the time when the Brisa, the pasuk in a different context, pasuk in the Devarim, says, "Es haBechor ben asnua yaker." The firstborn, even the son of the hated one, he should recognize. But the pasuk there says, "Lasses lepishnem," give him a double portion, whatever he has. Which, what does that mean, yaker? Says the Brisa, yakirenu lachem. He should make him recognize to others. Meaning, if the courts don't recognize who's the firstborn, the father is believed. Which Mekana Rabbi Yehuda says from here, a person believed to say, "This is my firstborn son," that he should take a double portion. And just as he believed to say, "This is my firstborn son," so he believed to say, "This my son, ben gerushahu or ben chalutzahu," that it's his mother that I married was a divorced woman or chalutza, and therefore he's a kohen that's a chalal, he's a desecrated kohen. And Chacham say, no, he's not believed. But one thing we see is Rabbi Yehuda is quoted here in the Reish of this Brisa saying that a person is believed regarding the status of his child. He's able to say he's a ben gerusha ben chalutza. So he's able to invalidate him. So why are you telling me that Rabbi Yehuda holds that he's not believed regarding his sons to say that they didn't have an appropriate Jewish origin? So Menachem Yitzchak, he says, this is what he said to that ger, who was claiming to be a ger, but in an inappropriate way. He says, Lidvarecha, according to your words, that you're saying that you're Megayer by yourself, then you're not Jewish. You never properly converted. There's no halachic testimony for a non-Jew. Oh, so therefore your children will remain with their cheskes kasher, with their presumed state of validity, because you're not believed to testify about them and invalidate them because according to your own testimony, you're not Jewish and you're not believed regarding them, only regarding yourself. As Tosfos brings in a few places regarding what's called Shaveh Nafsheh Chaticha De'Isur, a person can make himself forbidden on something, but that wouldn't necessarily work for someone else. Another approach, Rabbi Shloimy, he says, you're right, that really he is believed, and therefore he should be able to invalidate his son. So why are we saying you're not Neman al B'necha? Because this is what he said to him. Yesh l'cha banim, do you have sons? He says, hen, yes. He says, Yesh l'cha b'nei banim, do you have grandsons? So he says, hen, yes. Oh, Malay, then that's when he said, Neman al B'necha, you're right, you are believed to invalidate your sons. And then we do learn that from Yakir. Like we said, that he's believed to say he's a ben Gerush ben Chalutz, and therefore he would be believed to say that they're not Jewish. But v'yat neman livsel b'nei v'necha. You're not believed to invalidate your grandsons. So as both Tosfos and Tosfos Chad Mekemoy here on the page say, so in such a situation when he has grandchildren, he's not believed even regarding his son, because we only believe him regarding his son and not his grandson. And if he's going to be saying that his son is not Jewish, obviously his grandson is not going to be. And on that he's not believed. As the Gemara brings Tana Malchus similar in the Brisa. He says, a person is believed to say regarding his minor son, but is not believed regarding his adult son. Which says, when we say minor, it doesn't really mean a minor. And the big one doesn't really mean a big son. If he's a minor, even if he's a minor, but he has his own sons, meaning the son has sons, meaning he has grandsons, let's consider an adult, meaning that he's not going to be believed. Like we said, he cannot believe al b'nei banim. If he's an adult and doesn't have sons, that's considered a minor. He is believed regarding his own son. So that's the idea that we're saying. He's never al banim, but not on b'nei banim. So as Tosfos explains, if there's b'nei banim, he's not going to be believed even regarding his sons. Although you're right, from Yaakov, we do show that one would be believed regarding his son. It says the Gemara that he said the first interpretation. It says, according to the words of the father, he's saying that he's not Jewish because his gears never worked because he did it by himself, and there's no testimony for a non-Jew, and therefore he's not going to be believed even to invalidate his own sons, even if there's no grandsons. It says, we just brought right now, a Bryce like Ravina, that he's believed on his son that's a cut, meaning that does not have his own sons, meaning there's no grandsons, because the Rashi explains, the Gemara assumes right now that the Bryce that we brought was talking about a ger that comes along, it says that I'm a ger, and he did it by himself, or not, and he'd be believed regarding his own self and his son, but not when there's grandsons. So how can you say that the halachas of Nachman Yitzchak says he's not believed even regarding his sons? So says the Gemara, that brisa that says that he is believed regarding his minor son is not regarding invalidating him when he's becoming a ger and he did it in the appropriate way. That's leini yakir itmar. That was going on the brisa of Yakir, which the brisa says, which we quoted also just before. That's just like a person is believed to say, this is my firstborn son, he's also believed to say, this is my son from a divorced woman. And that is what the brisa is saying, that he's believed regarding a cotton, meaning when he does not have when his son does not have sons, where, yes, here the father is a regular Jew, and he has testimony. And the Torah believed him regarding his son, just not regarding his grandson. But regarding a ger, you're right, even regarding his son, he would not be believed because there's no edus for Avik, which is like that of Rav Nachman by Yitzchak. Now, continue regarding this halacha of receiving gerim, of accepting converts. Turn around, learn the brisa. If someone comes to convert in today's times, normally they tell him, what do you see to come to and convert? Don't you see the Jewish people in today's times are afflicted, they're pushed, and they're lowly, and they're subservient, and they're tumultuous, and all types of afflictions come on them. So if he says, I know, then I'm not worthy to fit and to join in the pain of the Jewish people, and who's going to give that with merit this? Then they accept him right away. And they notify him some of the lighter mitzvahs, some of the more severe mitzvahs, and let him know about the oven, the sin of leket, shikro, peyamai, about the gleanings, and about the bundles in the corner of the field, and the poor man's tithe. Jamor is going to explain exactly all these criterion of the brisa. We let him know the punishments of mitzvahs. They tell him as follows. They said, look, you should know, until you didn't come to this attribute of converting, you ate certain types of fats from the animal, which are forbidden to Jewish people, you wouldn't be punishable for being cut down at a young age. Chalalta Shabbos, if you desecrate the Shabbos, you have to punish the you wouldn't get punished by being stoned. And now, if you're becoming Jewish, you can eat of ben fats, onish cars, you can get punished with cars. Chalalta Shabbos, you can desecrate Shabbos, onish you can get punished by being stoned. Now, it's just like they let him know the punishment of violating mitzvahs. So they let him know the gift of its reward. Or they tell him, the world to come in the Asay Tzadikim will only made for the righteous. And additionally, they tell him that the Jews in today's times, they cannot accept, as a continuum base, not too much goodness, because their Yetzer Hara makes them go after that, as the Gemara says in Sukkot Beis, and maybe they become arrogant, they're going to sin. So it's not too much good that Hashem gives them. But later on, neither could they handle too much punishment. Now, however, in Marbin Love, they don't increase words on him, this ger, to intimidate him that he should remove himself from not converting. And the Imadakting Love, they're not so precise on him. Now, Kibbutz, once he accepts, Mol Noisam Yad, they circumcise him right away. Now, Nashtar B'tzitzin, if there are certain strips of flesh that were the bris milah, the circumcision was not peeled away appropriately, which Hama'akvin and Samila hold back the circumcision, then they go back and they circumcise him a second time. Now, Nasrapi, when he's finally healed from the circumcision, they immerse him in the mikveh right away. You have two tamil scholars standing on him. And they let him know mitzvahs kalas, mitzvahs chamuras, some of the lighter mitzvahs, some of the more stringent mitzvahs, which Rashi explains, although we did that already. But now through the tefillah is when he actually enters into gerus. So therefore, at the time of the tefillah of the mitzvah, then you have to go ahead and let him know the oil mitzvahs to accept the yoke of the mitzvahs. Tava Allah, once he immerses and he comes out, he's considered like a Jew for all halachic purposes. Now, Isha, regarding a woman, so there women put her in the mikvah up until her neck. You have two Talmudic scholars standing on the outside. And they let her know from outside, mitzvahs, some of the lighter mitzvahs, some of the more stringent mitzvahs. And now, whether it's for conversion, whether it's slave that's being freed, the Gemara is going to explain for what halacha we're comparing that they have the same halacha. Additionally, in the same place where a nida immerses herself, which is in the mikveh, which is our 40 saw, Sham ger ve'evan meshochet, that's the same place where a ger and a freed slave, who also then becomes like a Jew, like a ger, that's where they immerse, where the chiddush in that is, although their tefillah is not for tum and tahara, like other tefillahs, like that of a nida, but in spite of that, they have the same halacha of a mikveh. And anything that's an interposition that gets in the way of a person's skin when they're immersing in the mikveh is chaytzit beger be'evan meshochet benida, also is going to be the same chatzitza regarding a ger, a free slave, and a nida, meaning not the nida of taharas, because a woman that's a nida in biblical times had a halacha of tumah, in Mishnah times, but rather even the halacha of nida that permits her to a husband, even though these tefillahs, although these three cases are not regarding touching taharas like other tefillahs, still they also require the same thing in not having a chatzitza. Now the Gemara goes back, the master said to explain the brisa. Master said, Ger Shabbat Lesgar, a non-Jew is coming to convert, even though they tell him, Mara Yista Shabbat Lesgar, why do you see fit to come to convert? And we said in my din, I said, we let him know, mitzvahs kalas, mitzvahs chamur, some of the lighter mitzvahs, some of the more severe mitzvahs. So what's the reason? Why were you telling him all these things? The parish that if he pulls back, not to convert, nifresh, let him pull back, and we don't really care, and if we tell him certain things to scare him off. Because Amr B'chelba, he says, Koshem Gem L'Yisrael Kesapachas. The convert is harsh to the Jewish people like a nega of sapachas, because the Chassidus says a passage in Yeshaya, the milva hager alehem, that the convert will join on to the Jewish people. The nispechu abeis Yaakov, they'll cleave to the house of Yaakov, which is a terminology of sapachas, which is one of the words used in the parashas of Nagam in the Torah. Now, what's the reason for this? Why is it so harsh to the Jewish people? So Rashi brings because, first of all, the converts will still continue to do some of the things they did when they were not Jewish, and the Jews are going to learn from them. Or they're going to rely on them when it comes to Issa B'Heter, that they're going to see the converts doing certain things which are problematic, and the Jews are going to think that's permitted or forbidden. Or Taisus brings because, to the contrary, that the Jewish people are warned how to treat Gerim many times in the Torah, and maybe they're not going to be able to be careful not to afflict them, and there's a great punishment if it's very harsh when they have converts. Or, as Taisus Yesharim explains, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu actually punishes us because of them, because when they do good, because they're excited, they're on fire for Judaism, they're coming and they're joining, and Hashem says, look, that we're not doing like them, even though they're not from the Yichris that we come from. So therefore, again, for many different reasons, or because it's Mesarvim Behem, and it's not Meshpachas and Yuchas Shabbi Yisrael, but there's many different reasons why it's harsh, and therefore we try to not necessarily dissuade them, but we do tell them certain things that might put them in a situation where they might not want to become Jewish. Verse 7 the Brisa, Medin Moisai will let him know of in the sin of lekachech lepeyah ma'asani, the poor man's gifts. Maitem, what's the reason that we tell him these mitzvahs specifically? So it's from a similar vein to scare him off. But Amar B'chi Bar Abba and he says, and this is the second version of what Rashi says, is since non-Jews are very particular about their money, as the Gemara brings that Ben Noich Nerag, a non-Jew gets executed, al pachas m'shaveh pruta, where if he steals even less than that of the lowest denomination of currency, because a non-Jew is very particular on even a little bit, and whereas regarding a Jew, we presume that to be forgiven, and by the non-Jews, you cannot return, rather you get executed, because in contrast by a Jew, it says v'heshva z'gzeila shagazel. You can return it, and then you get atonement. But by Ben Noach, the Gemara says, their warning is their death sentence, and once he violates one of the Sheva mitzvah Ben Noach, he gets executed. So that's why we tell him these mitzvahs, which are small amounts of money, that maybe it'll stop him from becoming a ger, because like, why should my money be hefker? Whereas by a Jew, it's considered mechila. Therefore, we tell him these mitzvahs regarding these small, insignificant amounts of money that he has to be moichel on, like the poor man's gifts. Now, we said in the Brisa of Eimar, but you don't increase too much. You're not so precise in them. Amar B'la says, Micro, what's a pasuk that shows us that we're not intimidating them and we don't dissuade them too much? Because the Chsiv says by Rus, it says B'Teira that Nami saw kimisametzes he lolachas ita, that she was very pushing to go with our Rus, to come back with Nami to be with the Jewish people, and therefore so she stopped talking to her. So we see that you don't continue to push them away if you see how determined they really are. Because it says before that in the Psukim, Amrullah, this doesn't say in the pasuk, but Nami said to Rus, Aslan Tchom Shabbos. Every Saturday there's a certain limit, 2,000 amas, how far you can walk. You can't just walk wherever you want. You can't go drive wherever you want to go. So Rus responded, Basha Telchi Elech, wherever you're going to go, I'm going to go. You're limited to 2,000 amas. I won't go 2,000 amas. So she told her, and we see that she's trying to tell us some halachas, but not too much. Aslan Yichud, he says, it's secluded for us to be a married man, a married woman with a man. So she said, Pasha Talini Olan, were you going to sleep? I'll sleep. If I can't sleep in the same room as a man, fine, I won't. So she told him, Mefkadina Shesh Meitz V'Yigimel Mitzvahs, we're commanded with 613 commandments. So she said, Amichami, your people are my people. If this is what your people have, fine. So she said, Aslan Abadz Gechavim, we're forbidden to worship idolatry. So he said, Belahai Chalahai, and your God is my God. She said, Abba Misa Nimsul Bezin, there's 4 types of executions given over to the court. So she said, Basha Temusi Amas, wherever you die, I'll die. She says, Beis Kavam Nimsul Bezin. It goes so far that there's actually 2 different cemeteries that the courts have. One is for those who get stoned and get burned, because those did very severe averis. And one for those who got killed by the sword and those through strangulation, which is not such a severe death penalty and not so wicked. So 2 different cemeteries. So B'Shama Kavan, they all be buried. So Miyad right away, but that's the point, right away. But so she was pushing, so she didn't stop talking again, like we said, that Imar Malav Imadak Fingalov. The Brisa said, Kibul, once the guy accepts, so Malnois and Miyad, so once the courts certify that, they circumcise him right away. So what's the reason why right away? Says we don't delay the performance of a mitzvah. Now he has his first mitzvah of the mitzvah of Milah for becoming a year. Now we said, but if there's, let's say, some strands of the foreskin that still remain, so then if it's ma'akav Milah, go back and you have to do that again. As the Gemara brings it down, like we learned this Mishnah Masechet Shabbos. Which this has relevancy regarding a baby on the bris milah on the 8th day, which on Shabbos, which you're not allowed to do, but for milah, which doichid, it's the same thing over here. It's the same tzitzin ha'ma'akav milah. You go back and do it a second time regarding him becoming a convert. So what are these strands that hold back the validity of the milah? It's basa achiv esrei b'atara. It's the flesh that covers the majority of the corona, which is a high strip of flesh that's around the male organ, where from there it slopes downwards and it slopes upwards. That the majority of that flesh is ma'akiv. And also, if let's say it's a kain, since a kain that's oral, it's forbidden truma. As the Gemara said later in Perek oral. Here also, if he had those tzitzim ma'akvin, he would not be able to eat truma. Now, Ravi just qualifies, says it's the flesh that covers the majority of the height of the corona, meaning of that row. Meaning, don't say the majority of the circumference. No, it's even just majority of the height. Now, the Brisa said in the Strapit, when he's healed from the Mila, Matvilin is Miyad, then you immerse him right away. So when the Strapit in sounds like only when he's healed. When he's not healed, he doesn't go to the mikveh yet. So what's the reason? From the Maya, Morzamaka, because water, it weighs down the illness of the wound, and therefore one doesn't go until the Mila is healed. And we said, that, and you have two Tamid Chacham standing on him when he does the tefillah. It says, a convert needs three. So it says, you're right, Rabbi Yechon says to the Tana, meaning the one who is teaching the Brises, read Shleisha, that actually have three Dayanim standing there when he does the tefillah, because the Geras has to be done with a bezin. We said, Tav of Allah, when he mercy comes out, then he's like a Jew for all halachic purposes. Says, for what halach? What do you mean for all halachic purposes? Of course, that's what makes him a Jew, is to say the ihadebe. Meaning, even if he subsequently backs out and he retracts and he goes back to being quote unquote a non-Jew, and then the Mekadosh Basison, then he gets engaged to a Jewish girl, she's engaged, and she would need a get. Because Yisrael Mum, we call him a renegade Jew, the Kedusha Kedushin, and this Kedusha Kedushin is considered like a Jew for all halachic purposes. Said over there, these halachas apply whether one is converting or whether it's a slave that's being freed, who's also becoming Jew now when he's being freed. Says the Gemara, so you would have thought that this that we're comparing, the freeing of the slave to the conversion of a non-Jew, is the couple of all mitzvahs. To say that when the slave is immersing himself to be freed, then you have to let him know some of the mitzvahs, just like you have to tell the ger that's converting. However, the minute the Gemara asks from the following brisa, but Medram, when do we say this halacha is beger by a convert of the Ebn B'Shachar, when you have a slave that's being freed, who's also becoming Jewish, fully fledged Jewish now, ain't tzarich l'kabel, it does not have to accept upon himself at the time that he's being freed the mitzvahs. Why is that? So Rashi explains. Because the moment that they tabled him originally back then, that when for the purpose of making him into a slave, then already he's applicable to some mitzvahs. As it says in the pasuk in the Baram Heilaman Yanuch Abduch V'Maschel, we see that your slave, your non-Jewish slave of a Jew, is not allowed to do work. And also we learn that in the Gemara Chagid of Dalmanav Lola Famisha, that whatever mitzvahs a woman has, a slave has. So already it was makabel mitzvahs. So how can you say that we compare it to a ger that you have to go ahead and be makabel mitzvahs when he's now becoming out from being a slave, when he's being meshucher? So Rav Sheshes says, like that's not difficult. Because the opinion that holds that he does not need a Kabbalah when he's being freed is the Shimon Lazar. That's what we say he does need is Rabbanan, that they're comparing him to a ger. It's a time like Linda Brisa. Plus says regarding the Yefas Tayr. When the Jewish people are fighting a war and there's a captive woman called the Yefas Tayr, so there's a procedure of that she cries over her father and her mother a month, and then the Jewish man could take this non-Jewish woman and she becomes his wife. Now, says the Brisa, but Medvrim, when do we say that he has to go through this whole procedure? It's like kibla, only if she did not accept upon herself to convert. So if she doesn't want to be a converted woman, then you could have the halacha yifas tayr, which is the whole procedure how to make her permitted to the Jewish man. But if she accepted to become a giyaris, so matfilo mutabamiyat. So she could table and make her become permitted right away. She becomes a giyaris. Shimon Lazar, he says, no, even if she's not going to accept upon herself to become a giyaris, she's refusing. She's adamant, I'm not being Jewish, no way. Even so, there's a way not have to go through the whole procedure of Yefas Tayr. How? So he could force her and immerse her for the purposes of being a slave woman, because any immersion of a slave is al karch, is with the force of against the will. We could do it against the will of the slave. Then you could also force her and immerse her to free her. Oh, Meshachar, then he frees her. As Gemara continues to and then he'll be permitted her right away. As Rashi explains, so obviously we see according to Rabbi Shimon, who we just quoted right now, an Eved does not have to make a Kabbalah at the time of immersing for the shiur, because she doesn't want to accept to be a Jewish woman. And you don't have to have that Kabbalah. There's according to Rabbanan that they didn't say that this is a way to get around the procedure of Yefas Tayr. They only said the only way around it if she's Makabal. If she's not Makabal, they said, okay, you have to go through the whole procedure. Obviously, they hold, because when you're going to free her, she would have to be Makabal, which she's obviously not going to do. And therefore, they didn't give that option. So we see that if it's not a difficulty, yes, that price is going like Drabanan, who hold that just like a ger has to be Makabal when they're titling to become a Jew, so too a Nev Meshucher. Whereas according to the Brisa that we quoted that says that you could, so that's not difficult, meaning the Eved does not have to be Makabal, that's going like Shimon Lazar, who obviously gave that option that Umuta B'miyad, because she does not have to be Makabal when she's being immersed for the Shiur.